My guest this segment is Miriam Tuerk. She's the CEO of ClearBlue Technologies International, trading on the TSX Venture under the symbol CBLU. Miriam, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, James.
Miriam, can we start with an overview, please? What is it that ClearBlue Technologies International does?
So ClearBlue Technology plays in the smart off-grid space. We make the brains of an off-grid system. And the reason why that is a huge growth potential is because the power grid, which today powers everything that matters in the world, is about to go through the same revolution that the telecom industry went through. So 30 years ago, all telecom was connected to a cable. Now it's completely wireless, and that caused a revolution to happen in the world. The power infrastructure is about to go through that exact same change. It's going to go to a situation where most of our devices, our Internet of Things, our oil and gas pipeline sensors, our cell phone towers, our street lights, our Wi-Fi hotspots are all going to be powered from wireless off-grid power. And in order to do that, you've got to have the brains of the system, which manages and operates that off-grid system. And that's what ClearBlue does.
Interesting. So what is the power source in these devices?
So every one of those off-grid systems is a mini electricity grid. It generates energy from solar or hybrid systems. It stores the energy in the batteries, some form of energy storage, whether it be lithium, which of course is a very exciting opportunity for the marketplace and for ClearBlue, or lead acid or whatever. And then it also controls and powers the load. In the middle of that is an electronics device, which is the brains of the system. It manages and operates and makes it highly reliable and easy to operate and maintain. And we manage all of our systems that are in 34 countries around the world remotely from our control center here in Toronto. So we are in the business of managing distributed off-grid power around the world.
Wow, fascinating. How does the revenue model work?
So unlike most, if not all, companies in that industry, we have a recurring revenue model where we manage and operate the systems on an ongoing basis. So a part of our revenue is the one-time upfront sale, and then a part of our revenue is the ongoing. And ongoing recurring revenue has been proven to deliver significant value back to shareholders, 10 to 18 times EBITDA on a strong, growing recurring revenue platform, and that's what ClearBlue is building.
Interesting. So is the company profitable?
No, and we don't want to be at this point. This is a $38 billion marketplace that is just taking off. And as with any high growth company that has the potential to be $1 billion revenue company, which is what we think ClearBlue will eventually become, needs to invest up front. So we are investing in sales, business development, verticals, and R&D, and are not planning on being profitable for a few years.
Sure. So what does your growth trajectory look like?
So our last quarter, which we published trailing 4 quarters, and we try to tell the marketplace to look at trailing 4 quarters because it's still early and revenue's lumpy. We were about almost 200% growth, and our Q3 is coming out next week. So the 200% growth we had in Q2 is very indicative of what we see the potential of in the marketplace, so doubling our revenue.
Wow, so 200% growth, is that something that's sustainable into multiple years going forward?
Yes, we believe it is. We believe it's an indicator of what's going to happen going forward, and everyone on the team is working very hard to make sure that that actually happens.
Interesting. So in the off-grid power world, is it more applicable to countries that don't have a fully developed power grid, or is it applicable in both developed power grids and undeveloped power grids?
So it's mostly applicable where you're doing a new installation. And the reason is because our marketplace does not require 5-year ROI investment. It's the one-time capital construction cost of an off-grid system is actually cheaper than the cost of the electricity grid. The cost of getting power to a location, that distribution, is 60% your cost of your electricity bill from Ontario Hydro or any other power utility. And so you get rid of that cost and you replace it with an off-grid system. So a lot of people think that's an emerging market, but it's also infill. So when you start to look at rolling out 5G in large urban infrastructure in North America, when you're starting to put Wi-Fi hotspots or security cameras, when you're doing new oil and gas pipeline, God hope we get those going quickly. When you get those infrastructure in place, you're going to want to have lots of environmental sensor power control you're going to do it all off-grid. So there's lots of, more than 50% of our business is in the North American marketplace, and we anticipate doing half our business in Western markets and half our business in emerging markets. We're in both places.
Great, diversified.
That's right.
Okay, so is it conceivable that the infrastructure for which these systems are applicable, streetlights, oil and gas monitoring systems, et cetera, is it conceivable that all of the legacy systems that are currently wired are going to ultimately be replaced by these types of systems?
Absolutely, and this is where you start to hear all of the discussion about we need to upgrade our infrastructure. And when you upgrade your infrastructure and you replace streetlight poles or you replace new things, inevitably you have to replace the cabling as well. And as soon as you have to replace that cable distribution, it becomes a slam dunk business case that it's cheaper. So we've done a number of projects where it's a new infrastructure build to replace an old infrastructure, and there it's much cheaper to go off-grid.
Okay, so that sort of brings me to my next question. Is this type of a system ultimately cheaper to install and operate over life of system?
Yes. So we've had one recent project where a large city actually said that putting in a grid-connected new streetlight on an urban street would have cost them probably $35,000 a pole, and going off-grid was a few $1,000s. So we're not talking about almost cheaper, we're talking order of magnitude cheaper to go with an off-grid system. It's the reason why today when you get a new apartment or condo or house, you don't even bother getting a telephone line for your house, you just go wireless cell. And over the next 5 years, you're going to say the same thing. We are going to be in a world very quickly where it's inconceivable to have power from pole to pole to pole down a street, down a highway, whether it's a new neighborhood, an industrial business park, or Bloor Street, where we already have systems on Bloor Street in Toronto. We actually had a press release a few weeks ago. We've got systems in more than 12 municipalities across Ontario and throughout North America. I think we have projects in 25 different states in the U.S., in addition to those 34 countries around the world. So it's happening everywhere.
So it sounds to me like we're moving towards a future with no electrical power grid that is centralized and run by a government. Sounds like we might be moving towards individual off-grid independent power?
Yeah, you think about you think about how disruptive that is to the model where you know, again, I go back to the telecom industry. AT&T owned the whole network, and then when cellular happened, now there's Verizon and there's Virgin Wireless, and so there's a really great aspect of this that the power utilities have monopolies, and this off-grid power capability allows you to go in and provide an alternative source and create competition and disruption. And any technology that makes it disruptive, so when the city of Hamilton can start to put streetlights anywhere they want at a much cheaper cost and not deal with the power exorbitant rates that they're being given, they move to those models for many different business reasons, one of which is to have competitive alternatives. And that's what ClearBlue delivers to these customers, because we make it possible to not just do your garden solar lights, but to put them in main streets, in mission critical areas where it really matters. And it's very disruptive and a high growth opportunity for the company.
That is a fascinating business story. It's one of the best I've heard in months. We're going to follow with interest. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for your time, James. We really appreciate it.